So low energy availability is a huge factor with these guys. And every unit is different, right? Even within special operations, each unit has its own personality and its own vibe. And, it, you know, these guys are always wanting to be at the top of their game. And it's very easy, right? In the Gen Pop, you sometimes hear that you can't outwork your nutrition. But in the special operations community, if you're at a unit where the culture and the environment is to do the work day in and day out at the top level, absolutely, they have the ability to outwork their calories on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And what we see a lot of times is these young guys that are coming in 19, 20, 22, 24, right? Their age, their youth protects them a little bit until it doesn't,
Yeah.
and so they'll come in with erratic eating patterns, not eating anything before they train, maybe getting breakfast after they train, probably skipping lunch, surviving off energy drinks and who knows what else during the day, caffeine,
Mhm.
um, you know, probably going to eat dinner, most likely to eat dinner probably out. Um, and then there will be this situation where they're maybe taking in an excessive amount of poor calories or nutrient poor food throughout the night till they go to bed. And
Mhm.
then we also can't ignore the fact that there's probably some alcohol involved as well,
Mhm.
right? So you have these irregular eating patterns that are not supporting physical performance. And it's not because they don't care, it's because they don't know, but also there's like a social aspect to
Yeah.
that, within the community. And because they're still performing really well, they don't really see the importance of managing their nutrition or some of those other lifestyle variables
Mhm.
that are going to matter to them in 10, 15 years when they're a little bit older
Yeah.
and things aren't working as well as they used to. And so that's kind of what we see in the younger population is they just don't have the knowledge, and we really focus on just educating them and then just really understanding like what's important to them,
Mhm.
you know and some of these guys, they want to go on to do even more with their career, and being able to educate them and show them, hey, this is how nutrition can make you faster, stronger,
Yeah.
maybe even look a little bit better.
Mhm.
But we also have to be forward thinking and think about how it's going to affect your hormone levels, your recovery.
Yeah.
If you are trying to stay in this organization for a certain amount of time, how can we make sure that you aren't falling apart
Yeah.
in a few years?
Yeah. I
Your
think that's
employees in that way.
that's a really good point. I mean, I see it in athletics, obviously not to that extreme, but you have these young men and women who they can get away with a lot. They can get away with a lot of dumb stuff. And like, it's not because they're dumb, it's just because it's working. So they haven't had to go through the rabbit hole of trying to figure it out. So I end up working with a lot of people who are 30 plus, 35
Mhm.
plus, because they've hit that wall either because they have children now, their lifestyle has changed, um, things have just slowed down enough, or they now have an injury or an ache and a pain. Um, but for the younger crowd, I think it's so important to talk about low energy availability and the ways that that can just slowly eat away at their ability to recover, um, in pretty nefarious ways when you're looking at things like bone regrowth, tendon strength, lean muscle mass, and just hormone levels. There's just so many things that can kind of just slowly tank after an extended period of time in low energy availability. And I think for men, unfortunately, they don't have the signal of losing their monthly cycle that women have. Um, where with women it becomes pretty apparent when we're in amenorrhea. Like we lose our cycle. Um, things are clearly just they're not working as well. And I think for men they can kind of just disguise it. They can just kind of they don't they don't notice the big warning sign because there isn't one. They can just keep going. And this obviously isn't speaking for everyone. Everyone's different, but I think there's
And
always
I think there's also
yeah.
the stigma around admitting that you don't feel good.
Yeah, especially in the military, I'm sure.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And so, what we'll see sometimes with the older gentlemen or those who are a little bit later in their careers, they get into the situation where they experience, just allostatic overload,
Hmm.
right? And so, sometimes it's nutrition related, sometimes it's nutrition and stress related. And it, there's just lots of variables there.
Hmm.
And so we see the situation where they've been in a state of low energy availability for a long time, where they're undergoing some pretty severe psychological and physiological stress, sometimes self-inflicted, and where there's just not enough thought given to the recovery process. And what happens is the body systems, and you're probably familiar with this, is they sometimes just quit working the way that we want them to work,
Yeah.
right? Cortisol levels are too high, testosterone levels are too low. Eventually cortisol bottoms out, and now we're just in this state of chronic fatigue, and now we can't control our blood sugar. Now our lipids are all over the place. I
Hmm.
have brain fog, I can't remember anything, and then compounding that, the nutrition, the stress, the lifestyle. Now you have physical injury from concussion, TBI,
Hmm.
overpressure injuries, right? And in the military, we take all these precautions to protect against those things. But when you're talking about guys who are, on the range, um, you know, uh, more often than not, who are being exposed to environmental things. We don't use lead in our munitions anymore, but some of these ranges are decades old and there's still lead contaminants on those ranges,
Hmm.
right? And so this just contributes to that. We have situations where you have shearing forces, you have gases from munitions, you're out in the heat, you're out there. There's just so many compounding factors for guys who are later in their career, and so part of my job is to make sure that we're setting them up for success by making sure that their systems are working properly, as much as we can. Are we feeding you enough calories? Are you getting enough protein? What are we doing supplement wise to support your immune system and your body's natural detoxification process? And how are we trying to look ahead to be proactive about what could potentially happen in the future? And um, how do we kind of stop that from happening, or how do we prolong the onset of chronic diseases? And
Hmm.
so for the older guys, that's a big thing. And again, like, I think their sense of mortality, like once it kicks in, like they really buy into that as
Hmm.
well.
Yeah.
They understand that nutrition is a big piece of that.